Today, I'm going to create one of the greatest players of all time. He's going to start out at a 40 overall, but will have 99 potential. Think of Austin Matthews in the playoffs, but with Wayne Gretzky's potential, and that is the type of player we have here. Oh, and obviously, I'm going to simulate his entire career to see if he becomes one of the greatest players of all time. All right, so you knew we had to bring back Mr. Ben Bendover. That's right, baby. He is 6'9", and wears the number 69. For obvious reasons. 245 pounds, an absolute animal. All right, now we need to find out which team Bendover will be starting his career on. We're going to spin this wheel, and whatever team we get, that's the team we're going to. Please, for the love of God, give me a good team. And Bendover is going to be joining the Carolina Hurricanes. This is exactly what they needed. They needed that star player that can get them over the hump. And probably in 5 to 10 years, Bendover will be that. Obviously not right now because he's a 40 overall, but I'm pretty sure he will get there. All right, I've been messing around with this far too long. For some reason, I just cannot get Bendover on the Carolina Hurricanes. I gave him a contract for a very long time, and it's showing no contract. I don't know if you can't put like a 40 overall player in the NHL. Maybe the game just does not allow it, but he's on the Chicago Wolves. He's a first-line center. He's a 40 overall. Let's simulate and see if he's still here next season. Well, it looks like Bendover is nowhere to be found. I even checked down here at the bottom, and yeah, Josh Melnick had 0 points in 72 games. Don't ask me how, because that is a terrible stat line. But Bendover just straight up disappeared. I guess you can't have 40 overalls even in the AHL. EA Sports, man. I gave this guy a contract. Why is he not here? All right, so instead I'm going to be bumping Bendover up to a 50 overall. Maybe then he'll actually be able to stay with the team and stay in the league at least, because a 40 overall is not allowed in the NHL or the AHL. There we go. Bendover is now a 50 overall. Hopefully now he can stay in the league. All right, this is my last goddamn time offering this guy a contract. I cannot get him on the Carolina Hurricanes, even though I put him on the Carolina Hurricanes before I even get into franchise mode, but we're not even going to get into that right now. EA Sports, I have a major bone to pick with you right now. This is beyond pissing me off. I've been doing this for the last goddamn hour. I offered him a contract, the most you can offer salary-wise for 1 year like he wants, and watch, he will go sign with another team. Oh, and would you look at that? He signs with the New York Rangers. Not like I put him on Carolina or anything to start the franchise. This game is an absolute fucking joke. I cannot put the player I want on the fucking team I want. So Carolina, sorry, you're just undeserving. You got swept in the conference finals. You're a fucking poverty dog shit stupid ass franchise. You don't have a number 1 player because nobody wants to play in fucking Carolina. And neither does Bendover. He's off to the New York Rangers, off to Madison Square Garden, and it, we'll run with it. I don't care. I just want to do this. I've been sitting here for the last fucking hour trying to make this work, trying to get him on the Carolina Hurricanes, which, if I'm being honest, should not be a big deal and not something that I take an hour to try to do. In any other sports game, any other game in general, something this simple should be that goddamn easy. But no, it's EA Sports that they make all their money off fucking hut packs because it doesn't make them money. They don't care about making a good fucking profitable game. All they care about is making goddamn money. And I get it. You're a company, I get it. But goddamn, man, NHL deserves a better franchise than fucking EA Sports. Bendover's on the New York Rangers. How long did he sign for here? 1 year at not even $1 million. 2-way contract. He's a 50 overall because I bumped him up and I still couldn't get him on the team. He's got high franchise potential, so let's get into the video. Alright, so Bendover did not play a single game this season. I guess he's just up in the press box. You know, he's a lot like Phil Kessel. He likes to shove those dogs right down his throat. Pause. But alright then, he didn't play a single game this season. He's still a 50 overall. Let's see if he upgrades next season. Alright, so heading into his second season, Bendover is a 54 overall. Still franchise high potential. Hopefully he gets some playing time this year because, yeah, he hasn't played a single game either for the NHL or the AHL. So hopefully he can get some ice time this season and not just be downing the dogs up in the press box, I mean. Bendover would end up playing in the AHL. He played 72 games, had 7 goals, 2 assists, and 9 points. He was also a -17, which we are not going to talk about. 6 penalty minutes, 72 shots, a almost 10 shooting percentage, 1 game-winning goal. So 1 of his 7 goals were a game winner. Not a bad first season in the AHL, if I do say so myself. I mean, he's still a 56 overall, but he is getting up there, so hopefully in a couple of years he can make his NHL debut. He's 23 years old. The Boston Bruins would end up winning the Stanley Cup as they beat Colorado in 6 games in the Stanley Cup final. Nathan MacKinnon is the greatest player of all time. He would take home the Ted Lindsay, the Maurice Richard, the Art Ross, and the Hart Trophy. Rasmus Dahlin would take home the Norris. Bergeron would take home the Conn Smythe, the Vezina Vasi, and Sidney Crosby would take home the Selke. Heading into his 3rd season, Bendover is up to a 59 overall. Hopefully he can play the entire year again, maybe even get some NHL minutes. Probably not at a 59 overall, but I'm surprised. He's moving up very slowly in overall. I thought he'd be way up there by now. 3 years in, I thought he would have huge jumps, but I guess not. Bendover would yet again play in the AHL, 72 games, 7 goals, 2 assists for 9 points yet again. He had the same exact stats as last season. He was a minus 12 this season, so he actually improved. Time on ice was about the same. The minutes were about the same. Pretty much identical years, back-to-back years for Mr. Ben here. He has jumped up to a 60 overall, only up 1 from the beginning of the year. The Oilers would end up winning the Stanley Cup as they beat Toronto in 6 games in the Stanley Cup final. Connor McDavid finally gets his Stanley Cup. Nathan MacKinnon would still take home the hardware, the Ted Lindsay, the Art Ross, and the Hart Trophy. Patrick Kane would take home the Maurice Richard. Dahlin with another Norris. The Conn Smythe would go to Connor McDavid. Jake Ottinger would take home the Vezina, and Sidney Crosby would take home another Selke trophy. Bendover is slowly growing. He's now up to a 63 overall. Honestly, I thought he would grow a lot faster, but I guess not. Still got 2 years left on his deal, not even making $1 million yet, and his trade value has gone down. He had a full bar at the beginning of the simulation, and now it's all the way down to below half. So that means we are going to trade Marty Necas to the Rangers for Bendover. We need him to reach his full potential. Let's see if it'll go through, and it does. So Bendover is going to be playing most of the game here. He's on 3 forward lines. Hopefully that'll make him grow a lot faster than he has already. This is going to be his rookie season in the NHL. He's a 63 overall. We do need to re-sign him in 2 more seasons. First season in the NHL for Bendover. Here we go. In his rookie season, Bendover would score 40 goals and have 61 points in 82 games. Not a bad rookie season at all. He was a minus 31, but we're going to ignore that. 20 penalty minutes, 328 shots, 3 game-winning goals. He's now up to a 64 overall. A very big jump up from the last 2 seasons where he only got 9 points in the AHL, and now he's getting 61 in the show. Unfortunately for Carolina, they would end up missing the playoffs by 2 points to the New York Rangers. I guess giving them a 92 Marty Necas definitely gave them an advantage. Carolina would go 44, 33, and 5. Mark Scheifele would have the greatest year of his career with 116 points, followed by Austin Matthews, Alex Ovechkin, who's 40 years old, and he scored 67 goals. Are you kidding me, EA? And the New York Rangers would go on to win the Stanley Cup as they beat the Winnipeg Jets in 7 games. Oh no, we just made them win the Stanley Cup. Well, that trade definitely made them win the Stanley Cup. Giving them a 92 Marty Necas definitely did it. We got Bendover. That's all I care about. We'll get a Stanley Cup in our future.
Are you sure about that?
I'm very sure of that, but for now, the New York Rangers are up, and the Carolina Hurricanes are down. Mark Scheifele is a god among men. Dahlin is the greatest D-man of all time. Mika Zibanejad would take home the Conn Smythe, and Nico Hischier would take home the Selke. Bendover now is a 69 overall. Nice. And again, he's going to be playing on 3 forward lines. We're not going to take out Sebastian Aho for obvious reasons. He's a 90 overall, our best player, so we can't take him out. But Mr. Ben is going to be running the rest of the center lines here. 3 forward lines. We also do need to re-sign him in the offseason. He only has 1 year left on his deal. To be honest, the best way to make Bendover stay with the Carolina Hurricanes is making him the captain. Yes, sir. Bendover, 69 overall, the number 69. He's 6'9", and he's an absolute rocket of a man. And he is now the captain of the Carolina Hurricanes. Bendover would end up having a great second season, 56 goals and 88 points in 82 games. He was over a point per game and only a minus 13. 27 penalty minutes, 367 shots, 8 game-winning goals, and he got his first 50-goal season of his career. He also led the Carolina Hurricanes in points more than Aho and Svechnikov. Nikolai Ehlers somehow had 116 points along with Scheifele, who had 114. What is going on in Winnipeg right now? What is going on in Winnipeg right now? Connor Bedard would come in third with 105. Kyle Connor was there, Leon Draisaitl, and Bendover would lead the entire NHL in goals with 56, one more than Tage Thompson, Connor Bedard, Austin Matthews, and Nikita Kucherov. But Bendover, man, he would be at the top with 56 goals. He's still a 69 overall somehow. I have no idea how. Unfortunately, yet again, Carolina would miss the playoffs. They would finish 38, 35, and 9. The Winnipeg Jets would go on to win the Stanley Cup as they beat Toronto in 7 games in the Stanley Cup final. I'm honestly honestly not surprised at all. They had 3 of the top like 5 scorers in the NHL. They're absolutely a unit of a team. Nikolai Ehlers would take home the Ted Lindsay, the Art Ross, and the Hart Trophy, while Bendover would take home the Maurice Richard. John Klingberg would take home the Norris. Nikolai Ehlers would take home the Conn Smythe, and Elias Lindholm would take home the Selke. Bendover has jumped up to a 74 overall. He no longer has the high franchise potential. Now he has the AHL bottom 6 forward potential, which is definitely a fall from grace, but he's a 74 overall, still coming up, and you already know he's going to be playing on 3 forward lines, but this time he's up on the first line with Sebastian Aho, a 91 and a 90 overall, along with a 74. Bendover would end up having 37 goals and 77 points in 82 games. He was a minus 12. He had 20 penalty minutes, 344 shots, and 4 game-winning goals. Not the year that he had last season, but still a good overall year. 77 points and 37 goals, near 40 goal season is very good in the NHL. Connor McDavid had 59 goals and 136 points, followed by Kaprizov with 121, Tage Thompson, Leon Draisaitl, and the GOAT, Mark Scheifele. Bendover, I don't think he would be close at all. No, he's way down here for goals. Where's 37 at? Right there. And yet again, Carolina would miss the playoffs. They would end up going 31, 42, and 9. And the Minnesota Wild would go on to win the Stanley Cup as they sweep Florida in the Stanley Cup final. Connor McDavid is Connor McDavid. Rasmus Dahlin with another Norris, his 4th in 5 seasons. Kaprizov would take home the Conn Smythe, and Fernandez would take home the Selke. Bendover has actually dropped down to a 73 overall. Again, he's going to be on 3 forward lines, but this time with 3 different positions, playing left wing on the first line, playing right wing on the 3rd line, and center on the 4th line. It looks like he's not going to grow anymore. AHL bottom 6 exact potential. He re-signed in the offseason for $5.2 million for 2 more seasons. I mean, he scored 37 goals and had 77 points last season. That is a lot better than a 72 overall, to be honest. Bendover would have his best season of his career so far, 50 goals and 92 points. He was only a minus 6 compared to previous seasons where he was like a minus 17. 19 penalty minutes, 389 shots, and 4 game-winning goals. Nikolai Ehlers has absolutely turned into a god, 112 points, leads the entire NHL, followed by Nikita Kucherov, Braden Point, Brad Marchand, Mark Scheifele. Where's he at? There he is, Mr. Bendover. He would have more points than Tage Thompson and William Nylander. Pasternak would lead the entire NHL in goals, but Bendover would be down here, only 7 less. And the Carolina Hurricanes are still absolutely terrible as they finish the year 34, 39, and 9, missing the playoffs. The Calgary Flames will go on to win the Stanley Cup as they beat Toronto in 5 games in the Stanley Cup final. Zegras would take home the Selke, Ehlers would take home the Ted Lindsay, the Art Ross, and the Hart Trophy, while David Pasternak would take home the Maurice Richard. Cale Makar, who's on the Pittsburgh Penguins, would take home the Norris. Ilya Samsonov would take home the Vezina. Bendover is back up to a 74 overall. He's still on 3 forward lines, but this time he's going to be playing left wing on all 3. 28 years old, he's probably not getting any better, even though he had his best season yet last season. 92 points and 50 goals, that is insane. Bendover would have another great season, 48 goals and 98 points in 82 games. He was a minus 25, that's not good at all. 13 penalty minutes, 353 shots, and 7 game-winning goals. Mark Scheifele would lead the NHL in points with 118, followed by Elias Pettersson, Kyle Connor, Austin Matthews. For goals, Matthews had the most at 60, followed by Kucherov, Kyle Connor, Brad Marchand, Vyshevsky. Who the hell is this? Ilya Vyshevsky. Bendover had more goals than the GOAT, Nathan MacKinnon. And the Carolina Hurricanes continue to absolutely suck, as yet again they missed the playoffs with a 33, 38, and 11 record. The Winnipeg Jets would yet again win the Stanley Cup, this time beating Philadelphia in 6 games. Scheifele would take home the Ted Lindsay, the Art Ross, and the Hart Trophy, while Matthews would take home the Maurice Richard. Adam Fox, who's on the Toronto Maple Leafs, would take home the Norris. Brad Marchand would take home the Conn Smythe for the Winnipeg Jets, and Zegras with a 2nd straight Selke trophy. Let's be honest, this is never happening. This is only because he's on the cover of EA Sports NHL 23. Bendover is now a 75 overall, and this team is absolutely terrible, so I said screw it and put Bendover on every single line, plays left wing on all 4 lines, because this team is terrible either way, so might as well play him the entire game, right? There is not a hope in hell that this team makes the playoffs. They're so bad, yeah, with Matt Murray as our backup. And just like that, Bendover would bust his nut all over the NHL. Pause. He would have 43 goals and 124 points in 82 games. He was a minus 75, 18 penalty minutes, 358 shots, and 7 game-winning goals. A minus 75, that's got to be the worst plus minus of all time in NHL history. Somehow Trevor Zegras would end up with more points than Bendover. He would have 128 compared to Bendover's 124, then followed by the GOAT Nathan MacKinnon, Mikko Rantanen, Adam Fox, and Leon Leon Draisaitl. For goals, Matthews would be tied with Rantanen for the most with 63. Bendover would actually be all the way down here with 43, tied with Trevor Zegras. At this point, it's become a trend that the Carolina Hurricanes miss the playoffs every single season. They would finish 30, 43, and 9, and Toronto would go on to win the Stanley Cup as they beat Colorado in 7 games. Nathan MacKinnon would take home the Ted Lindsay, Rantanen took home the Maurice Richard, Zegras took home the Art Ross, and MacKinnon would take home the Hart. Adam Fox would take home the Norris. Austin Matthews would take home the Conn Smythe. Samsonov with the Vezina, and Trevor Zegras would take home his 3rd straight Selke trophy along with his Art Ross, of course. Bendover is up to a 75 overall, and he's still playing the entire game. You already know he's been getting that training in the bedroom with Lana Rhodes. He's got to up his cardio somehow. He has 1 year left on his deal. He's making $8.1 million at 75 overall. Bendover would yet again have an amazing year. 54 goals, 125 points. He was a minus 62, 56 penalty minutes, 385 shots, and 6 game-winning goals. And he would finally lead the entire NHL in points, followed by Connor McDavid, Mitch Marner, and Austin Matthews. For goals, Nathan MacKinnon would have the most with 59. Bendover would be down there, but not far in 3rd place. And you already know Carolina is not making the playoffs. They would finish dead last in the Metro with a 28, 48, and 6 record. They would actually have the worst record in the entire NHL. Toronto would yet again win the Stanley Cup as they beat Winnipeg in 6 games in the Stanley Cup final. Bendover would only take home the Art Ross, not the Ted Lindsay or the Hart Trophy. Brady Tkachuk would win the Conn Smythe, and Trevor Zegras with his 4th straight Selke Trophy. Bendover is still a 75 overall on all forward lines again. Bendover is still a 75 overall. He's also still on all forward lines. He's playing the entire game. Bendover would end up having 58 goals and 105 points. He was a minus 55. He had 49 penalty minutes, 361 shots, and he had 8 game-winning goals. Connor Bedard would lead the entire NHL in points with 136, followed by Clayton Keller, Austin Matthews, and the GOAT, Nathan MacKinnon. Connor Bedard would be the only player in the NHL who had more goals than Bendover, and the Carolina Hurricanes finished dead last in their division, finishing 34, 43, and 5. The Arizona Coyotes would go on to win the Stanley Cup as they sweep Montreal in the Stanley Cup final. Connor Bedard is the greatest player of all time. The Conn Smythe would go to Bedsy, and Trevor Zegras would take home his 5th straight Selke trophy. Bendover is still a 75 overall, 32 years old, still playing the entire game on a below average Carolina Hurricanes team that is not very good. So likely he's going to continue to put up points and miss the playoffs. Bendover would have 47 goals and 107 points. He was a minus 26, 6 penalty minutes, 366 shots, and 6 game-winning goals. He had a very good year overall. Besides the defensive side of the puck, a minus 26 is not very good. Connor McDavid would lead the entire NHL in points with 113, followed by Ferrario. Lincoln Ferrario would have 112 points. Bendover would come in 3rd, though. And Carolina continues to be one of the worst teams in all of hockey, finishing 26, 49, and 7. And the Ottawa Senators are going to go on to win the Stanley Cup as they beat Nashville in 7 games. Brady Tkachuk would take home the Ted Lindsay and the Hart Trophy. Alex DeBrincat would win the Conn Smythe. And of course, Trevor Zegras would take home the Selke. Bendover has dropped down to a 73 overall. He's 33 years old. He just re-signed in the offseason for 2 more years at $8 million. Bendover would yet again have a great year, 56 goals, 97 points, a minus 25. Mitch Marner would lead the entire NHL in points at 37 years old. For goals, Bendover would come in 2nd place, only behind Matthew Irwin. And obviously, Carolina would miss the playoffs yet again. They finished 28, 46, and 8. The New Jersey Devils would go on to win the Stanley Cup as they beat Dallas in 5 games. Jack Hughes would take home the Conn Smythe. Jeremy Swayman would take home the Vezina. And just like that, after 12 seasons in the NHL, Bendover has decided to call it a career and retire. He would play 820 games, score 489 goals, have 485 assists, and 974 points. He would have decent numbers over the course of his career on the offensive side of the puck, definitely not the defense. He was a minus pretty much every single year, and his highest was a minus 75, which has to be an NHL record. And he would not play not even 1 playoff game in his entire career, as the Carolina Hurricanes were shit. For his career, he was a minus 330. That is beyond terrible. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you leave a like and subscribe to the channel. This was one of the more frustrating videos I've ever made, mainly due to EA Sports and how bad this game is, but we would get it done. And that's gonna do it for this video, boys. Remember, don't be silly. Wrap your willy.